Hey guys, it's Fi here, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a patch preview analysis video. Now, I'm going to be focusing on bot lane and mid lane stuff. I'm not going to be doing jungle because I know Foxshop does the jungle anyway. So let's get started. So I think there's a lot of key things in this patch which is going to balance out the game, especially for bot lane as well. So I'll just touch on the first thing. So Annie is kind of a small change really. The problem was that Annie was, when she cast her ult late game, someone just instantly burst down Tibbers, and the kind of the AoE damage that Tibbers is supposed to provide was pretty much non-existent because he just died so quickly. This is like he gets an extra 1,000 of health at a rank 16, or when Annie hits level 16, which is actually quite a big deal. So it's a good change for her, makes her a little bit more viable late game and not just kind of an early burst champion. So this is probably the biggest AD change here with Ashe. So they've changed her passive now so that she's going to gain focus, 3, 4, 5, 6 focus, instead of having the crit chance, which is then used when you attack. This time it's just going to charge up until you have 100 stacks and then you get a crit. So it's a really, really good change for Ashe. The problem was that her passive before just allowed her to cheese at level 1 or when she ran back to lane, because if you attack something then you use up the crit and it resets, so it was almost useless for trading. But this is a really, really effective tool for trading now. So Ashe is a little bit weak in trading because all she's got is her basic attacks and her volley. Now volley actually does a lot of damage. It does 40 damage level 1, and combine that with an auto attack, that you're probably looking at 110, 120 damage on an AD. At level 1, when they have 500 health, that's a huge amount of damage. So that's really good. But then when she gets a little bit higher level, it's more difficult to trade. If you're looking now that she's going to get a guaranteed crit, you can just crit someone, volley them, and you're going to do like 200 damage, maybe even more than 200 damage. And that's like a huge, huge trade for Ashe. Because of her slow as well, you can now play her a little bit like Varus, where you just go in, you crit, poke, and then you run away again. That's going to be like optimal situation for Ashe, and it's going to mean she's a lot more viable in lane. Her ultimate is absolutely crazy mid game. It's really good for catching people out, and especially in lower elo when people tend to kind of get a bit too close, you can just instantly send your ult off. Your whole team will collapse, and it's a really good way of snowballing the game. So I think this is a really good change. I'm really glad they reworked her passive, because before it was just useless. There was nothing it really gave you apart from that level 1 cheese. So we'll have to see how it actually works out trading wise when she holds up against other ADs, but I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more Ashe now as well, which is really good. So Karma, I'm going to have a look at, and I'm going to treat her as a support, because even though people played her mid when she first got reworked, she doesn't have the AP ratios or the damage to really be a mid champion, so I'm going to treat her as a support. Now, what they've done is really smart. So the Karma's problem at the moment is she does a bit of everything. She has like a shield, a root, a poke with her Q, but none of them really stand up. So if you're going to play someone who can poke, heal, then you might as well just play Sona, because Sona's got her ultimate as well, which is even better. So why play Karma when you can play Sona? So the things that are changing, so the inner flame, they're going to reduce the mana cost, and the explosion radius is getting increased as well. So this is going to be really good for landing her ultimate into a Q, which is going to do initial damage, and then after like a second or two, it then explodes and everyone in that radius gets hurt. So that's going to be really good utility now for Karma to attack the AD. Now there are a couple of reasons. So the explosion radius increase means that there's more chance the person is going to get hit by the second part of the damage, which is good. And the mana cost now means that she can just spam that over and over again, and it may be viable to actually level her Q if you want to harass rather than shield or heal. Now the root with Karma was kind of a little bit funny, because it was a little bit like LeBlanc's root, but it didn't really do anything when the root finalized. I mean, it gave you a little bit of a stun, but apart from that, it didn't really do anything. The main problem was that before she got healed over time for 25% of her missing health, right, which is okay, it's not that bad, but it wasn't anything. It wasn't a reason to use your ultimate cooldown with that ability. But now they've changed it so that it's going to heal a lot more. So now placing 20% on an immediate heal, and then they're going to put another 20% of missing health if the leash isn't broken. So it's a really, really clever idea. It means that Karma's like trading potential goes through the roof, because before, to get in like that close to leash someone, you're going to get attacked a lot by both the AD and the support, and most times the AD could just sit there, get rooted anyway, but kill you before you could get away, so it was kind of pointless. But now with the heals, it means that she gets in that close, but she has a bit more survivability, so that's really smart. I'm just going to move on to Kha'Zix now. These changes are going to be really interesting because Kha'Zix is one of the strongest mid laners at the moment, and for good reason as well, because he is really, really good at snowballing. Like, if he gets ahead in lane, which is not too difficult to get ahead, he just snowballs the rest of the game, and it's very difficult to deal with the Kha'Zix, apart from like hard CC, but you have to build a team around stopping Kha'Zix, which means that there are like another 4 players on the enemy team. So if you focus Kha'Zix out so hard, you've got another 4 players that are just going to get free roam to do whatever they like in a team fight, and it's really dangerous. So they had the right idea here, I think, by taking damage from his W and placing it on his Q, because Kha'Zix should, instead of just poking down with his W over and over again, the main problem was that W applied his Living Fear, his passive, so like they did bonus damage to that, which kind of was silly, because the whole point of that was that if you jump into someone, you get a bonus damage on the auto attack that you attack them, and then you use your Q. That should be, when Kha'Zix first came out, that should have been his main trading potential, but actually it was just spamming W over and over again with a tier. You don't run out of mana, and there's no danger to you because you can't take anything in return. It applies a slow as well. So it's now going to slow targets for 20% for 2 seconds. Now it's a lot less than before, so it means he can't just like E into you while your team's retreating, slow everyone, and then let his team catch up, which is good. Yeah, it's interesting to see what they've done with his ultimate, because people weren't bothering to evolve his ultimate, and they didn't. Like, they're kind of trying to make him a melee assassin rather than just a jump in, jump out kind of character. So obviously when you jump in, you're probably going to get hit with some CC 9 times out of 10, because that's like Kha'Zix jumping into you. You think he's weak, and you just CC him. So hitting your, most Kha'Zix are going to hit their ult before they get CC'd, which means they'll be stealthed. The 50% is a lot of increase. Like, it's similar to Alistair, not on the same level as Alistair's ultimate, but that's still like a lot of damage reduction. The evolution as well of his Q is really interesting, because they're giving him 8% of missing health now, and that's like before he gets isolated. So if you catch someone isolated and you've evolved your Q, you're probably going to take off like 50% of his health, and that's not a joke. That's a ridiculous amount of damage, because they've increased the isolation bonus to 45%. Combine that with the 8% missing health as well, so you basically just poke him down a little bit with your W, that you then ultimate jump onto someone. If they're already on about 60% health, you then Q them, ignite, they're probably going to die, and that is a huge increase. But it does mean that Kha'Zix now, players are going to have to be more skilled, because they're going to have to jump into fights, they're going to have to assassinate someone with their Q, not just with their W, and jump out again, which means that actually, even though they've just rejuggled his power, they haven't made him weaker, it means that weaker players, so players who aren't as good, aren't going to be able to be as successful with Kha'Zix, which I think is a really good idea, because at low elo he was kind of face roll. I've met him a couple of times on my Smurf, and I did not enjoy the experience at all, because he's so strong. But now it's going to require more skill to play, and I think it'll be interesting to see. I have to see it in game, but on paper it seems like they're just going to make him make him do more damage when he actually jumps into you. So it's a really good fix for Kha'Zix, in my opinion. I'll talk about Lissandra really quickly, because this is probably the most underrated change this patch for mid lane. So the Ring of Frost cooldown is good. Reduced to 50 mana, and the first initial cooldown on it, because you don't level it first, you're going to be looking at 14 seconds instead of 18 now for the first kind of lane phase. That's really important, because if she gets ganked, like, she can just Ring of Frost and then E away, or she casts her E obviously to get it moving, then just W's, and there's like no way anyone is going to catch her. The problem before was that it took a lot of mana. Now the only thing with this I can see being a little bit of a problem, because basically Lissandra's going to have so much protection now with that. Like, 14 seconds is not a lot of time in between ganks. Like, if you think someone tries to gank you, you then probably fail it because she uses her E, you'll then go back, you'll farm like a Wraith camp, and then you'll come back again maybe. That time is going to be about 14 seconds. And so she's going to come back and she's just going to do exactly the same thing again. It makes her ridiculously safe, and she's also got a lot of damage. So it's going to be really tough to lane against Lissandra now. The biggest thing though is her Frozen Tomb. So they've increased, like if you don't know, you can cast it on yourself or an enemy. If you cast it on yourself, it works pretty much like a Zonya's. Now the self-cast duration has been increased to 2.5 from 1.5. Now that is huge. Like 2.5 is the duration of Zonya's Hourglass, and that item costs like 3,260 gold, I think. So basically, your ultimate is worth 3,000, a free item at 3,260 gold, which is crazy, and it also does a huge amount of damage. So yes, like at higher ranks they've reduced the damage. So like at rank 3 it's going to do 350 instead of 450. So it prevents you kind of just from eating into the enemy team, activating your ultimate, and then going out again and just doing so much damage. But to be honest, the thing that she can do now is just she can E into like the enemy AD, Frost Tomb herself, because it slows around her, so the AD, if it's not someone with escape, so say like Varus or something, he can't then jump away from that, so he's going to be slow, taking 350 damage plus AP, which is a lot of damage. And you can see that the slows increase now to 40% as well. So instead of like taking, because it was 20% before, you probably wouldn't take the full 450 damage because you could get out of it. But now that the slow's at 40%, you're probably going to take the whole 350 damage. So actually it's not really enough to her damage anyway, which is crazy. So they've just kind of rejuggled it around. So she does that, and then she'll Q and W the AD again, and then she, like a lot of Lissandra's build Zonya's Hourglass anyway, so then she just activates Zonya's Hourglass and she's got 5 seconds of not being able to be targeted. That is absolutely ridiculous. Like if you can imagine in a game when someone Zonya's, and it's kind of like 2.5 seconds is a long time to switch a focus or wait for them to come out, and if she can do that twice, that is absolutely crazy. So her teamfight potential has gone through the roof in this patch, and I'm expecting to see a lot more Lissandra's played. She kind of fell off after her initial kind of introduction into the league because she was very niche. You had to jump in and do damage, otherwise you can't really just spam your Q, sorry, because it doesn't really do enough damage. But with this change, I expect to see her a lot more because she's so strong at the moment. Now this is the other big change. Okay, so Sona has her power chord kind of gave her lane control. She was one of the top 2 supports in high elo. Everyone played Sona and everyone played Thresh because both of them are just miles better than everyone else. Just in like trading potential and lane control, those two have the most power, so they were the favourable supports. Now what they've done is really clever. So they've made Sona more tanky, but they've taken away some of her damage. So what they're trying to do is switch around her burst damage for sustained damage. So the power core damage, it looks a bit confusing here. So if we just have a look, like 13 instead of 8 plus 10 times the level. So basically what it's trying to do is nerf it as it goes along in levels. So if we think like Sona's running up to you and power cording you for a lot of damage is probably like pre-6 kind of thing, because after you get your ultimates it's a little bit more risky for Sona. So if we just have a look at level 5, so at the moment she's going to be doing 43 damage, okay? So this is with the new change, she'll be doing 43 damage with that power cord. Now if we have a look at what she was doing before, so 8 plus 10 times level, so that's 8 plus 50, 10 times 5, 50, so that's 58 damage. So that's like 15 damage less than she was doing before, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but actually in numbers wise it is a lot of damage change. Like, so that's even at level, so you have to go up to level 7 here to 62 to even get the same damage you were doing level 5 before. So it is a really big change, and it's going to alleviate a little bit of pressure, because Sona's problem was that she could just, because the power cord scales off level, you don't have to max your Q to do damage with your Q. So what you could do is just max your W. You could sustain the lane and just heal up after every trade. Even if you go even, you just heal up and then you practically won every trade. And then she'd just activate her Q and power cord for a lot of damage. Now it was really silly because in lane there's no reason to use your W really power cord or your E power cord, because it's just your Q is so much better. This kind of it brings more counterplay to Sona, because if she comes in range of the power chord and wants to auto attack you, your support and your AD can just jump on her, because she's not going to do so much damage that you don't want to trade anymore. That was kind of her problem, was that she'd activate her damage and kind of throw the enemy AD off. They don't want to engage now because they're a little bit low health. But now that she's not going to do so much damage, it's going to bring a lot more counterplay to her. Now, the reason I was saying it was sustained damage is because they're buffing her health and armor, which means that she's now going to be able to take a little bit more punishment. So even though it does less per power chord, she'll probably be able to get more power chords off in lane, because she can be a little bit more aggressive and not be so afraid of just instantly dying in like 2 seconds, which was a big problem of Sona's. So the other thing we're going to have a look at, Perseverance Aura, which is her W. So they're reducing the bonus armor and magic resist, which I think is a little bit clever, because most people were maxing their W first and just sustaining the lane. Sona doesn't really bully people out of lane at high elo, but what she does is she allows them to trade even, and then just heal the damage back up. So your AD gets to full health before the enemy AD, and then you can go back in and trade again, and you just slowly automatically win the lane. So that was the problem. Now, with this bonus armor and magic resist debuff, it means that because Sona was basically staying on her W, the ally AD was getting the armor and magic resist, which meant trading was even harder. But now this is going to kind of take a little bit away from that as well. They've also lowered the duration of the power chord to 3 seconds from 4. So it's a little bit strange, because they're kind of just nerfing the heal a lot. So I'm not too sure what Riot's intention is with this. I'm guessing they just thought it was a little bit too strong, but it's kind of put Sona in a funny position now, because she's still really good. Don't get me wrong, people will still use her a lot, but it means her trading potential has gone down quite a bit as well. So she's no longer going to be a top pick, but she's going to be pretty even within the top one. So she'll be probably kind of on par with people like Nami, something like that. And it's an interesting change, because they've taken some of her damage away. They've taken some of her protection away as well, like to her AD. So we'll have to see how it actually is laning with her. But I suspect that you'll be able to trade a lot better with her now, so you won't have to be too afraid when she has a power chord. But before, when someone had a power chord, you just have to run away. But this time, I think you can probably trade with them and get some damage back onto Sona. Okay, so I'm just going to go into the general things now as well, because this is the last couple of bits. But there are 2 things that I think are important for ADs, so I just want to mention them very quickly. So Vayne's Condemn here, you see, so they've now added range indicators for the Condemn. So a lot of Vayne players I've seen don't actually use their Condemn very much in lane. Now that's kind of a mistake, because Vayne isn't that weak in lane. What you need to be doing is trying to look for opportunities to condemn the enemy AD into the wall. Obviously you don't do this all the time, but when you know that you can trade, if you get the Condemn, you're most likely going to win a trade, you're most likely going to get a kill, and that's how you win lane as Vayne. You get a Condemn and you snowball your advantage. Vayne's really good when she's ahead, but she's very bad when she's behind. So if you can kind of capitalize on that in the first couple of levels, that's going to be fantastic for you, and you're going to snowball the lane really hard. So the Condemn indicator is going to be really good, because there are opportunities that people miss, especially myself, when I'm trying to condemn into a wall and it's not quite there. But this is just going to allow you to hover over the enemy, work out where it is, and you can kind of work out whether you're going to hit a wall or not. So it's just a quality of life change for Vayne, but I think it's going to be really, really helpful, especially for people who don't play Vayne a lot, to kind of work out whether you can stun someone or not. Now the other thing is just this slow. So this was kind of skipped over by pretty much everyone. But it does concern Varus, and it concerns Misfortune a little bit, but not as much, and obviously Lulu as well. So what this is doing is, when you come out of a slow area, so you say Varus puts his E down, that's a circle of slow there, and when you come out, it used to have a longer time for that kind of slow to diminish away, and for you to go back to full speed. Now what they've done is they've changed that kind of time for it to go back to normal, for your movement speed to return to 0.25 seconds. So that means once you come out of the Varus E, you'll then be able to get back to full speed pretty much straight away. This is really important for Varus's trading, because what he used to do is get 1 or 2 auto attacks, start to walk away and release his E, on the enemy AD, and because they're slowed, they can't then trade back any damage because Varus has just run away. What this is going to allow people to do is a little bit more counterplay, because if Varus doesn't land his E directly on someone, like in the middle, then they can just walk out of the E and they can just trade back some damage, because they'll have their movement speed returned to them so quickly. Varus won't be able to retreat as quickly as he did before, and the enemy AD will be able to get some damage on him. So this is going to be really important for Varus players to make sure that you hit your E dead on someone, because if you just hit them on the sides, then they're going to run out of it. It's not really as much utility as it was before, and it doesn't mean you get such a free trading potential as before. So that's something to really bear in mind, is you need to be releasing your E dead on someone now, because if you don't, they don't come out, you trade, and that's not really how you play Varus. So the last thing I want to touch on is items, because there are a couple of things that have changed in regards to AD. Now, the boots of speed, so they've had the cost of the recipe has been shifted from the boots. So the recipe has gone up by 25 and the boots have gone down by 25. So that means that the boots are cheaper, but when you upgrade them to like your Berserker Greaves, it's going to cost you 25 more. So they've not really done anything here apart from you can now start 4 potions and boots as your like first buy. So while I don't think this is going to be a massive change for ADs, I think it gives you more counterplay, because the reason you don't take boots now is because you don't really need the movement speed, but what you do need is the health, the lifesteal, and the damage from Doran's Blade. Now, with boots and 4 pots, that kind of gets rid of the lifesteal, because if you're running lifesteal quints as well, like boots is not going to be such a big deal. Now the other thing is that when you're playing against someone like Blitzcrank, Thresh, we're only human, so we're going to get hooked at some point. Like, everyone gets hooked, and that's really bad, but it's really easy to dodge those hooks if you've got boots. And this kind of allows you to take boots. Your trading potential will be a little bit bad, but remember, you've got 4 health potions and the enemy AD has none. So you can take the boots, you can dodge those blitz hooks, and then blitz is pretty useless if you don't get hooked, so you've kind of taken him out of the game. And then what you can do is you can just trade with the enemy AD. You'll probably lose a trade very slightly, but as long as you don't lose them too badly. So if you put damage onto the enemy AD, that damage sticks. They've only got life still, and if you keep repeating that pattern, so if you keep attacking the enemy AD, you keep bullying them out of lane a little bit, you go even or slightly lower, you pop a health potion, you get back to full health before they do, and then you can just slowly whittle away at the enemy AD and you can push them out of lane. So I think this is going to be very important. Like, at high levels of play, no, you're not going to see boots first on ADs, but I think just in solo queue, when you're against a Blitzcrank or a Thresh, you could take boots and you could still go even in lane. I'm not saying it's the best option, because Doran's Blade is always the best, but if you don't feel comfortable dodging hooks, it's not actually that bad now to take boots with 4 health potions. So I'm just going to have a quick look down. I don't think there's anything else really to touch on. The only thing I'm going to touch on is going to be the Spirit Elder Lizard. So this is blue buff Ezreal. They've reduced his attack damage by 10 and they've shifted some more bonus damage to monsters. So what they're trying to do with this is not hurt the junglers, but they're trying to hurt the people who are building this item on people. Now for 2,000 gold, it's still worth buying. 10 AD doesn't make a difference in the long run, to be honest. Like, it's a big nerf, because that's like, what, like 20%, 25% of the AD on that item has been removed. But the reason you really buy it on Ezreal is you get the burn, you get the CDR, mana regen, and obviously the attack damage. It just means that it synergizes with his Q really well, and taking 10 AD off that isn't such a huge thing. You're still going to be able to buy that item on him, and it's still going to be part of blue build. I would not think that's enough to nerf blue build. What they should have done is touched on the Frozen Fist, and I expect they'll do that in probably the next patch. So this isn't really going to impact anything too majorly. You may see people building Bloodthirster now instead of the Elder Lizard, which is something I'm seeing a lot more at high elo, because people want the damage from their Q, which is still on the Bloodthirster, but then they have a bit better mid game. The CDR is slightly lower, but especially if the team gives them blue, then that's perfect. The last thing I'm going to touch on, because I had someone ask me this, is the Nash's Tooth and the Wit's End. So do I think they're viable on ADs? Wit's End maybe on attack speed champions. when you're against people who are stacking MR. Generally, no, you won't buy it, but it's quite a lot of attack speed, 42%. Compare that to Phantom Dancer, which is 50%. So it's not quite as big an increase. It's 2,400 gold, whereas Phantom Dancer is 2,800. So for an extra 400 gold, I'll probably buy the Phantom Dancer. But some people like building quirky items, so there does still 5 magic resist from the target. Stacks up to 5 times, that's 25 magic resist. You're going to be doing more damage, but you don't do magic resist, so it's kind of a utility item. Not really worth it. Nash's Tooth, are you going to build it? No, because it scales off ability power. So yes, if you want to play AP Varus, then yes, buy this item. It's absolutely amazing. So you get ability power on it. You get attacks, basic attack steal 15 plus 15% of ability power as bonus magic damage. So if you're playing Diana, if you're playing Varus, any mid champion that auto attacks a lot, then buy this item. Please don't buy it on Orianna because you don't auto attack on her. Like you do in lane, and yes, this item would be amazing in lane, especially with Orianna's passive. But no, when you get to mid game, you're all about staying at the back, sending a Q, W, R in, and for that you just need flat AP. So like Grail, Hat, those are the kind of things that you need to be buying, not Nash's Tooth. I'm just gonna check very quickly if there's anything else. So the last thing I'm probably going to just touch on is this going to be Spirit of the Spectral Wraith as well. They've reduced the ability power by 10. Now this item was already very touch and go with mid champions, because yes, it's good on people that need the spell vamp, but now they've reduced the AP as well, and they're not reducing the cost. It's really cost inefficient to buy this item. Like they're trying to remove spell vamp slowly. I can tell because they've nerfed Will of the Ancients, and I'm nerfing Spirit of the Spectral Wraith as well. So the only people I buy it on are people like Swain, maybe, because he benefits so much from the spell vamp. But apart from that, it's not really worth your money anymore, so I wouldn't purchase that. Okay, so that pretty much sums up the patch notes then for 3.8. I hope you found this interesting, and I've never done this before, so please leave any feedback you have for me in the comments below, and I will respond to everything and try and improve it for the next patch. Check out my other videos, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitch, and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you next time.